Welcome, low ego action heroes. This is Debbie Levitt for whoever I am from Delta CX. We're a full service CX and UX consultancy, and man, am I sleepy. But I'm so excited to see Michele Ronsen today, so I'm definitely going to stay awake for it, and you should too. And before we bring her on, I just want to say a couple of usual show opening words like thank you so much to the people who are financially supporting this channel, even though it is completely optional because I have a day job. But thank you, everybody who helps me buy cheesy stock videos and delicious chocolate chips. And if anybody else wants to throw a few dollars at the channel, just click that join button on YouTube. If you have questions about the stream, they are probably answered here. deltacx.com/links. How do you join in some of the stuff? How do you submit stuff? Where's our calendar of events? How can you get coaching with me? Everything I get asked all the time, the answer is here, which means that's where you want to go if you have a question. And of course, please subscribe. And not only that, won't you think of 3 people who might be interested in a show like today's? You know other people who are interested in UX research and want to learn more about it. Maybe you've got a manager or new people at your job. Tell them about the show and the channel so that we can share this out and help more people. Okay, I think that covers some of the early stuff. And so with that, I'm going to attempt to hit all the right buttons and proudly announce that over the weekend, my boyfriend and I did lots of testing, and we figured out a way to bring in Zoom in the vMix system. So welcome, Michele, spell you, and tell us all about you.
Hi, Debbie. Nice to be back. For everybody I haven't met yet, my name is Michele Ronsen, and I am the founder of Curiosity Tank based in San Francisco. We are a user research consultancy and educational platform. We offer a variety of user research workshops, consulting, one-on-one training, team training, and so forth. So I'm hands-on. I'm doing a research project right now. Everything that I talk about on these shows and the podcasts is based on my hands-on knowledge of actually doing the work.
So
And so
true. Everybody, well, thanks for being a favorite guest. Everybody knows I always say, look up the people who are teaching you stuff, make sure they are qualified to teach you this stuff. And Michele is beyond qualified. So she's certainly someone you want to learn from. And if you are watching live right now on YouTube or LinkedIn, or now we're broadcasting to Twitter as well, and you have a question, just ask it. I'm monitoring the chat rooms as well as my tweets, and we'll get your questions answered when Michele takes a logical pause. So let's start by saying today is episode 141, Research Ops. Michele, what is Research Ops?
It's a good question. So Research Ops focuses on how we both orchestrate and optimize the value of applied research. So orchestrate, I actually have a class called Orchestrate. And this, how I like to explain this is the ballet dance that we do both behind the scenes and in front of the scenes to produce our research. And by optimize, I mean, how do we make it more efficient? How do we make it more effective? And how can we increase the value of the research for the organizations that we are supporting? That would be a very kind of top level. When we talk about optimizing, that might be how the people are actually doing the work. It might be the processes that we're employing to get the work done, the tools we use, say to schedule or conduct or analyze and synthesize or even manage our knowledge sharing, and how we share and store those learnings to avoid rework in the future.
Yeah, great point. We need more of that to help share that across our teams and organization. Now, thinking about research ops, is this, and I'm going to ask a question I think other people want to know because I think I know the answer, but is research ops a single person's job? Is it a research ops team? Who does this?
So great question. It really varies. All the clients I've worked with, I have worked with huge clients that have no research ops. I've worked with small clients who do have research ops and everything in between. One similarity is that research ops looks different across all of these teams. Sometimes it's one person, and maybe that one person will focus just on, not just, but maybe that one person will focus on recruiting and scheduling specifically. I've worked on other teams with research ops where research ops doesn't do anything to do with recruiting or scheduling. They focus on, say, onboarding or tool management or knowledge sharing. So research ops looks very different from team to team. Often it's a subset of design ops. Sometimes it sits within a separate organization. But it's not about making individual researchers more effective at a whole, or when, kind of done properly and thought out holistically. It's more about up leveling how an organization does research. So to answer your question, it comes in all shapes and forms.
Got it. Okay. So, how can you tell when your company or team or department needs research ops?
Yeah. So in my experience, it typically happens when a team reaches a point where there's maybe 7 or 10 researchers. The typical pain points will show up either very early in the process when it comes to recruiting and scheduling, or at the back end when it comes to knowledge management and sharing. But the best way to diagnose where to begin in implementing research ops is to take a good look at your team and do some research on your team. Find out where the pain points are. Are the pain points, maybe they're in budget management, maybe they're in governance, maybe it's in tooling, maybe it's in guidelines and templates. Where are those pain points, and start by addressing the biggest pain points. But in my experience, it usually either happens in the beginning of the process or the end of the process. But it varies. It doesn't look the same on every team.
Okay, thanks. And of course, we're live. I see 11 people in YouTube, and I'll have to check how many people are in LinkedIn. So if you have any questions, please ask them because we are live and happy to answer them. Are you seeing a growth or surge in the number of jobs that have research ops in the title or require these types of skills?
Yes. So last week I shared an article on my LinkedIn. CNBC had rated the top 10 growing jobs. I believe it was in the US, but it didn't necessarily say, nor did it say how that rating was done. So as a researcher, that was
Right.
interesting to me. But user research was listed as number 8.
Wow.
Top growing jobs. Yes, I was shocked. Number 1 was vaccination specialist.
Okay, well, that makes sense, but hopefully, that's going to hit its bell curve and then go. We've got to keep growing more user researchers.
Yeah. So as design and research teams grow within an organization, so does the need to define these processes and these systems and strategies to, again, optimize the value that we bring to the organization, to reduce the rework, and to make it more efficient and consistent at scale. So yes, I'm seeing more research ops positions. I'm seeing more user research positions.
Great.
And we're just seeing more value and recognition for our practice across the board. So as that continues to grow, and there's no sign that it will do anything but grow, we're going to continue, I think, we're going to continue to see more and more of these ops roles.
Excellent. We've got a question in the chat, so I'm going to put it up on the screen and read it out. Friend of the show, Udipta, asks, so research ops is kind of like strategically managing all things research?
Yes. It might include tooling, governance, maybe documentation, and kind of legal and compliance. Think about your I was going to say your DNAs. Think about your NDAs, processing incentives, tracking those things. But also, like, I'm working on a team right now where research ops doesn't do any scheduling or any recruiting, but they are heavily focused on guidelines, templates, documentation, onboarding, and things like that. So they also do the budget management. They negotiate the contracts. So it really looks different across, different organizations.
The
But
thing
the
that, oh,
operations of
sorry.
research, yeah.
Yeah, right. That's ops is for operations. The thing that occurs to me is that it sounds like this person really needs to be strategic and operational and be able to address research from a lot of different angles. And I hope nobody's going to be upset at me for asking this, but it kind of sounds like it's not really an entry level job. It sounds like it's the kind of thing people do when they have some years of experience and now know how to handle a research team or department. What do you think?
I don't know if anyone would be upset, but you certainly have to, I would think to succeed, you certainly have to know something about research and have a really organized procedural kind of focus and enjoy tactics. There's a lot of tactics involved with orchestration. It's, at the end of the day, it's an operations role. I think, many times people ask me, and this came up in a Google group yesterday that I am a part of, is a role in research ops a good way to break into user research? And I say, surely it can get you closer to the action, and it definitely can't hurt to get a good sense of what it takes. But it's a separate skill set and function. It's a subset of what many user researchers responsibilities are when they don't have research ops. But it's a real deep dive into those tactical and in some ways more strategic functions, but it's also internal facing, which is different for most user research positions who are speaking with external prospects or customers. Now, some user researchers focus 100% on internal studies and things like that, but there are differences for sure.
Cool.
That
Thank you.
said, I
Oh,
think many people have made the transition. Is that the norm? I'm not sure. I would love to hear from people um, or get a better sense of that kind of statistic.
yeah, if anybody in the chat room has something to add, and Larry's got a question before we read some of the other comments. Beyond the obvious UX education, what additional knowledge should folks seek out to build a research ops process in their company?
That's a good question. I think the first place to start is to diagnose what the biggest pain points are within that team. No team or few teams will have the same exact tool stack, culture, problem and opportunity spaces. So an upfront kind of diagnosis would be the best place to start. And then moving forward iteratively. This isn't something you're going to, implement this month. This is something that will continue to evolve over time. Working with a consulting client right now, and one of the biggest opportunities is in the initial scoping phase of a new research project and in the documentation phase of how they are actually documenting their notes. They also have big opportunities with participant pool management and recruiting and things like that. But where we chose to start was at the very beginning of the process. Now, that might look very different for the next team or the next coaching situation.
We've got another question, and it takes up two screens, so we'll get it out there. Emily says, oh, is it coming up? Let's see. I'm pressing all the buttons. Emily says, Debbie, I agree about experience level. It's curious that ops roles don't often require research experience. If ops roles are to be strategic, the candidate must know about research. What do you think, Michelle? Can we have someone in research ops who hasn't done the research work?
Yeah, I'm thinking back on a lot of the research ops people I've worked with, and they actually don't come from a research background.
Hmm.
They're coming from an ops background, or they're coming from In some cases, a people recruiting background, like a job recruiter background. In other cases, it's more about sort of database creation and management. So I think it would definitely help to have a good sense of what goes into user research. Um, but I'm just kind of doing like a quick span of the research ops people I've worked with, it clearly hasn't hindered them from becoming successful at their jobs.
Okay, hopefully. When I think about when I hear you talk about research ops, two things come to mind, and one of them is the role that I traditionally think of as research ops, and then there's the role that I traditionally think of as like research coordinator, like someone who's not necessarily strategic or operational, but they help teams with that the database stuff and the research repository stuff, the recruiting, the scheduling, the communications, but not necessarily carrying out the research themselves. The job that I'm describing, that I'm calling research coordinator, since I've often seen it called that, do you think that job is a research ops job, or is that something else?
It's without seeing the specific job description, my interpretation is that's probably a subset of research ops. um maybe that's the only person on the team and they're more in like an admin role. Maybe they're kind of doing what they're told to do versus thinking or thinking more strategically about how to optimize. Maybe they are fulfilling on something that exists. But my hunch is that it's probably a subset of research ops, but maybe not as strategic or not yet at the strategic level. It's more tactical. And there's different components of research op, both tactical and strategic. Ideally, it's strategic also.
Yeah, for sure. We've got a hello from Darren, and we've got a comment from David Snodgrass, who was on the show, what, a year or two ago now? Um, I would think the need for research experience would depend on whether the research ops is responsible for curating the research practices across the org or not. Thoughts?
How are we defining curating?
Ooh, that is a good question. David, do you want to add to that? Now we're going to take, but there is like a 30 or so second delay. So this is a conversation in slow motion.
Sure.
Sorry.
um, Again, in my experience with working with a variety of teams and clients, some with research ops, some without, the size, the scope, the responsibilities really do vary. No one research ops team or support person really looks the same. And again, some do include recruiting and scheduling support, some don't at all. Some handle all of the onboarding for new team members, some don't at all. Some take the lead on finding and implementing new tools and processes, others don't. Some really focus on the knowledge management sharing in between. So there's a lot of hybrids. And most likely these teams aren't static. They're constantly, moving forward and they're building their own roadmaps as well.
And we've got another question from Miguel. Good to see you here today. And he says, is research ops a job that even a smaller company or startup should have? Or is the first step to actually have the research person build a research team first?
Yeah, how do you go? Great question. You really want to get to the point where you have 7 to 10 researchers first. Um, Before that, you're probably not going to see the benefit. At least 5 researchers. Um, any smaller research teams, you're probably best suited with those researchers handling their own research ops, just so you get the biggest bang for the buck. And there also might not be, at a smaller team, there might not be enough work for a research ops person to do full time.
And so, is there like a ratio we should have in mind? I know you've said that once we have 7 to 10, or even at least five researchers, we might need that research ops role. Is it kind of like, hey, for every 5, 7, 10 researchers you have, look at building that out and get another person?
Again, I think that really varies. I've been on teams where there's 30 researchers and only one ops person.
Hmm.
On a team right now where there's probably 30 researchers and there's maybe 6 ops people. So I think it really varies depending upon that scope. What is research ops in that particular setting responsible for?
We've got an interesting comment from Larry, which I'm going to turn into a question. He says, I would think that someone without user research experience in charge of research ops would, or maybe might, find it more difficult to earn the respect of the researchers as well as the other managers in the company. I don't know if you've spoken to any of the researchers who have research ops people without a research background. Do you have any sense if that seems to change the vibe at all?
I think that's going to depend on the culture. I could actually see a big benefit to having a research ops person who's familiar with research, but has never actually conducted it because they're a little bit more removed. One of the things that I'm thinking of adding or exploring in Curiosity Tank is a sales/ops person. And I've gone back and forth. Would I like this person to come from the user research community, or would I really benefit from someone that comes from outside of the community that can see in, right? And they can see different things and present a different perspective by borrowing from analogous industries. So I can see, both pros and cons. And then in terms of the respect, I definitely think that's about, the culture and the person, frankly.
Yeah, so I think that that's kind of like that age-old question of, what benefits the team more, the fresh eyes from somebody more outside, or the knowledge and experience that comes with someone who is part of this industry. And maybe the answer ends up being that it's a mix, that once you have more than one research ops person, you want to make sure that at least one of them has extensive research experience so that maybe there's some sort of balance there.
And there's also very different types of research experience. Are you looking to pull in a quant person? Are you looking to pull in a qual person? Are you looking to pull in an academic? Are you looking to pull in someone that's, has more of a programming background or more of a design background or more maybe instructional design? There are so many different parts of our ecosystem um, that might be something interesting to consider as well.
And we've got a question from Emily, which I think we touched on a little bit before, but let's just, go over it again just in case. Emily says, in your experience, who does the ops work before a formal ops position is created? Is that done by the other researchers?
Yes. And sometimes if there's a research coordinator more in the role of like a research admin or an admin to support the research team, sometimes they help out too.
Cool. I'm trying to think what other questions I had for you. Was there something else we were going to cover about this that we didn't get to yet?
I'm not sure.
I think that was some of our
I don't know
core
if we
things.
want to take a bigger dive into like tooling or templates and
Oh,
guidelines
before I
to
ask you about
remove kind of.
that, that I think Larry's kind of getting there, maybe towards the template and guidelines thing. But Larry wonders if there is a framework for building the research ops operation.
There is. Kate Townsey leads the research ops community, a very, very active Slack group also, and they have developed their 8 pillar framework. I don't have it in front of me, but it includes maybe in different language, governance, budget management, tooling, knowledge sharing, communications, Certainly there's some space for recruiting and participant management, but they've come up with these 8 specific pillars. That is a great start. Kane Townsend from Aladdin founded the research ops kind of movement and coined that term a few years ago. And they have held several workshops all over the world to gather feedback from people who work in this capacity, and have just done a tremendous job in educating the industry and evangelizing, for the importance of the role. So I would definitely check out the research ops community for that framework. And they also have done a tremendous job of building visuals. So for those of you that are very visual, not only do they have these 8 pillars, but they have these maps. On my LinkedIn right now, when I posted this morning about this event, I included one of their gorgeous visuals, which makes understanding this somewhat maybe esoteric topic that much easier to digest.
I'm going to go back to LinkedIn and I'm going to look at that graphic. But while I do that, we have a question. Sahar asks, do you see a correlation between service design and research ops?
Yes, actually, that's a very interesting correlation, because it is essentially when considered holistically and strategically, it is essentially the service design, or can be the service design of the research team. And not only how the team operates with each other, but how the team operates with the consumers of research, like the broader stakeholders outside of the research team, such as like the product managers or marketing, or whoever, or the designers, whoever those consumers are. I love that analogy. Actually, I think you can really run with that.
Cool. Thanks. And yeah, I was just looking at that graphic. Everybody check out Michele on LinkedIn, especially if it's today, January 26, 2022, and she's posted this image. If you're watching it later, Google for it. Larry's got another
And
question.
connect with me.
Yes, that's
please
true.
connect with me. Connect with me on LinkedIn if we're not connected yet.
And Larry has all the questions today. He says, is there a framework for collaborating with design ops and or transitioning from research to design?
So a couple questions there. So oftentimes research ops is embedded underneath design ops, if those teams are currently embedded today. So there would be an intrinsic relationship depending upon the organizational structure. Actually, Debbie and I and a few other people were talking about a new series of learnings focused on design ops earlier this week. Do you remember what that name was, Debbie?
Where were we talking about that?
It was the 6-week program focused on design ops.
That's right.
That
And we couldn't
included research ops.
And we couldn't tell if it was any good or not because the website did not do a good job describing it. So, yeah, this is one of our private conversations behind the scenes where we're sending each other boot camps and crazy crap. And it's like, can you tell what this is? Do you know who these teachers are? Yeah, we don't know what that was. I will have to check that out. Yeah, Darren says LinkedIn is not displaying the image at full size. So I think people who want to see the image, it will have to Google for it. It says RE plus ops. And it says it's got a hashtag of what is research ops, and then it's got the word framework. So I'm thinking maybe if you Google some of these words, maybe what is research ops framework, I'm thinking you might find this graphic. It looks kind of like an ecosystem map, or I don't know what you would call this, Michele, where it's got these different circles, or like almost a mind map and lots of circles popping out of circles.
Another great visual is the pillars. So research ops pillars framework. That would include the 8 pillars that they've organized the responsibilities into. And again, I just want to be really clear, not every team works across all 8 pillars. You certainly, when you begin to implement a research ops position or research ops support, you're not going to start with all 8 either. First diagnose your pain points with your team, right? I mean, this is UX is a team sport, so we want to work together to prioritize where the biggest bleeding is and put our efforts to solving one, moving forward iteratively.
And Sahar is echoing what you said earlier, which is that Re Plus Ops has a great Slack community. Is it open to everyone? Do you have to be a paid member of something?
No, I believe it's free,
Cool.
and it's incredibly active.
Very cool. We have another question from Larry. Larry is grilling you today. I'm so sorry, but some good questions. He says, "How do you avoid isolating the research from the folks beyond the designers? I like to use research insights to justify design decisions to the non-designers in the organization."
I think that's cultural, and that would certainly come under the knowledge management and knowledge sharing aspect. So it sounds like there's an opportunity there. So if we were consulting, I was consulting with you, one of the first things I might ask is, how is the research learning compiled today? Who's involved in that process? And kind of walk me through the steps and the formats and the stakeholders um, uh, contributions at some point. Certainly in the Ask Like a Pro series, one of the biggest kind of learnings I try to implement is that UX really is a team sport. And from the planning stage, the research planning stage and onward, we should really be working very closely with our stakeholders, not only to make sure that we truly understand the problem space, but that we're prioritizing the right questions in the right way, and we're gathering that feedback from the right people at the right time. By including the stakeholders in the research planning process, we're not only going to ensure that that will take place, but we will also make sure that we're establishing credibility for the study, and we're building that trust as we continue through the subsequent phases. The more buy-in that our stakeholders have from the initial planning stage, the more likely they will be included and excited about the learnings, and then we'll be able to move into action that much faster.
Action. We don't have another question just now, so I would probably ask you, tell us some stuff about the tooling. So, would these be tools that researchers use, tools that the research ops jobs use? Tell us more about that.
It could be both. So every team has a different tech stack. So let's say that team one has its own internal database for recruiting, scheduling, and managing participants, and a different tool for dispensing incentives, and then a different tool for managing things like NDAs. There might also be a different tool stack for how they conduct moderated and unmoderated research. Maybe some use Microsoft Teams, some use Zoom, some use some third-party platforms. And then there's different tools for knowledge sharing. Some might have a Google Slides site. Some might be working with something, in Dovetail or Maze, Enjoy HQ. There's a variety. Some just have them all in Dropbox. Some have them in Google Drive. So you could see clearly there across, different stages, how the tools might differ. And with the varying tools come varying processes, come varying various logins. Some teams are using a survey software. The entire team might use the same login. And some teams might have a login for each individual researcher. Also managing the permissions, who can view versus who can edit. A lot of these tools charge per seat or per by the quantity of the study. So oftentimes they may be negotiating the prices or the budgets for these tools as well.
Larry has a question I really love because we know what the answer is. It's the question that answers itself, which I like to call a cat's urinary tract question, but that's got a longer backstory. Quickly, it comes from a 1990s American TV commercial where a man with a cat looks at the camera and says, "Is a cat's urinary tract health important?" It's like, well, there's only one answer to that. Yes. Larry says, do you feel that having a codified process or operation helps legitimize user research in a company? Yes. Maybe?
Uh, yes, but I think but before codifying, there's a lot of understanding and awareness that probably needs to take place. Whether you're codified or not, I don't think will um, necessarily increase the value and the awareness. I think that's a different conversation. There were certainly, and I'm coming at this from the alternative perspective. I've worked for a lot of really successful, admirable teams that have no research ops. So I don't think it's dependent. Does that make sense?
Yeah, right. I think there's a lot that we can still do, and that legitimizes research, especially when we show the great effects and outcomes of it, even if we don't have that formalized role. I think that's what I hear you saying.
Exactly. Perfect.
My new friend Dennis is here, though I forgot to ask him how he pronounces his name when we spoke earlier today. Ciao, Dennis. He says, late to the party. What are typical blockers in organizations? I can imagine that implementing research ops is quite new to companies that are delivery focused.
I think probably some of the blockers might be getting the head count. Um, some of the blockers might be proving the value or demonstrating the value that research ops could bring. Um, I think that those are similar blockers for UX design roles as well as user research roles, though. When implementing anything new for the first time, I think there's typically some sort of skepticism, and there's always a budget slash value sort of trade-off that is considered or should be considered. But I don't think that this would necessarily be different, again, research ops compared to similar types of headcount, or certainly those first hires in those groups. Yeah.
And thinking
What do you
about
think about that?
well, I'm thinking about Dennis's question, and I spoke to him earlier today because he's a product owner at my new job, and it makes me want to ask you: can you tell us more about how a research ops person might interact with, or interface with, or collaborate with people from outside of a larger UX department, like Dennis, the product manager?
Um, in my experience, there's various ways. So I'm thinking about my current situation, and my research ops person helps negotiate my contract and my scope for that latest study. But that was it. After that, she's out. I might contact her about an invoice, but she's not playing any role in recruiting or scheduling or anything like that. She'll get me access to the tools that I need. My passwords expire every 90 days. So she's in charge of making sure I have access, on an ongoing basis. The last team I worked on, for a sustained period of time, the research ops person did interact with the product manager, and we collaborated on the survey screeners. The research ops person actually programmed the survey screeners, handled all of the recruiting, the scheduling, set up all the Zoom links, and processed all of the incentives as well. So again, different teams, different models, different levels of responsibility, scope, size, things like that. How would you like to interact with a research ops person? Let me start there. How might a research ops person help you, or what areas do you, this is a quadruple barreled question. What areas or what pain points could a research ops person help you with now?
That's a good question. Do we have anybody watching live who is from outside of a UX team and can think of ways that they would like to connect more with a UX research team or research ops role? That would be really interesting. To me, the main thing that jumps out at me is that if research ops is in your company is a role that includes that repository and that knowledge sharing and kind of accumulating it and grooming it and maybe socializing it, that would be definitely a key role in the communication of the availability of new research, or maybe we've cross-referenced some quant data that the data and analytics team got. That to me sounds like a really key thing that a research ops person could do, to be kind of like that ambassador or ambassadorette to these other teams and departments.
Yes, and in many functions that's on the researcher today. So I just wrapped up a study about 2 weeks ago, and it was on me to send a shift report. And the shift report included like a summary of the actual research findings. My stakeholders told me who to send it to within the organization, and it included people from customer support to product management to content and marketing, as well as people on the research team and the design team. And then certain people reached out to me for additional questions or clarifications, invited me to their team meetings to present the research and further these dialogues. So sometimes that's on the researcher as well.
And quick note for Dennis, we did just hire our first research ops manager role in where we are working. So if that's someone you want to connect with, let me know. Larry has a comment, and then we have another comment. Larry says, I can imagine that execs would jump on anything with ops in it as if it's like a game token to collect. They want to be one of the cool companies with research ops in their company. Are you finding that this is like a cool thing that people are like, wow, gotta have it?
I can't say I am. I
Okay.
think that the the value and the recognition for UX in general and user research has just grown exponentially. And I think that's probably been one of the silver linings of COVID, actually, is the greater awareness of what we bring to the table. And as these teams have grown, so have the needs to create more processes and strategies and procedures to become not only more efficient, but to really amplify the work that we're doing. I should add that internal communications is often a part of research ops too. And some of the teams I have worked on have like a monthly newsletter. Like, these are all the studies that we completed this month. Here is a quick snapshot. Go here to learn more. Some of them have quarterly reports. Often research ops is in charge of aggregating the research learnings and distributing them in sort of bundles. And that's a terrific way to make sure that the learnings are being shared and amplified throughout other organizations.
Yeah, great ideas there too. And Sahar is back and says, it sounds like process improvement is also a large part of the responsibility of a research ops manager. I think receiving feedback cross functionally from other teams could improve research processes.
Definitely. And earlier, I think I spoke to diagnosing, the biggest pain points on the team, and part of that diagnosis would be with your broader teams, including the people who are consuming your research. So the UX of how we actually conduct research should be, taken into primary consideration, not only within your user research team, but also, again, those consumers of the research, the people who need to act on them, as well as participants, right? So are you getting feedback from your participants about how easy it is to join the study, about their experience going through the study, and about their incentive? How quickly was that incentive process? Were they able to access it okay? And things like that. So really thinking holistically will serve everyone better, and also give you a more strategic lens for which to know where to target your time and efforts.
Thanks. We have about 10 or so minutes left together. So if people have questions, please post them. LinkedIn, you've been awfully quiet today. I see 6 of you watching live. So does anybody have any questions or comments they want to add while we've got Michele live with us? Please post that. I am watching for your comments. But that's all the comments we have so far. So was there another topic that you wanted to bring up?
I often write about these topics, whether it's research ops or how to optimize certain part of the user research process, or reduce the time it takes to create your research plan and things like that, in my newsletter called Fuel Your Curiosity. It's a free newsletter. I write about 3 times a month. If this topic interests you, I imagine that many of the other topics I write about would interest you as well. You can sign up for the newsletter at curiositytank.com. And I welcome you. Come join our community and learn a little bit more about how to optimize your own processes and procedures. Many times I'm sharing my own tools and templates from the Ask Like a Pro series. Particular topics you'd like us to dive into, either here with me and Debbie on the show or in the newsletter, just let me know.
That's a great question. Now that we have some people joining us live, let us know if there's any research topics you would like us to dive into on a future show. I think Michele has been here 300 times, so you can always go to the YouTube channel and, oh, there's the emoji of me. You can always go to the YouTube channel and write Delta, or just go to YouTube in general, go to and write Delta CX, and then whatever the heck is on your mind. And chances are there is a video with Michele talking about it and teaching you how to do it. So go ahead and check that out. I just recommend everybody we have over 400 videos on the Delta CX YouTube channel. So chances are we've covered it, but you never know. Let us know. We've got a question from Nate. And Nate asks, have you had any issues with certain functions wanting to own this? Thinking upstream marketing functions potentially feeling this comes too much into their space? Turf wars.
The more I work in this industry, the more I also realize and embrace that we have similar goals. And I'm not an advocate of these turf wars. I'm an advocate of amplifying the knowledge. If marketing has a better system for this, then let's learn and let's join them. We're stronger together. If your consumer insights team has a better system for that, then great. Let's learn. Let's join together. Many times I see that a team will say, but we already have this function, or we already have this process. Great, let's learn from it. Like, what's working well and what's not, and how can we grow together? I'm more of a collaborator in that sense than a owner. Hey, if someone else's FTE can manage this, all the better. But if there's lessons learned, let's learn from them.
I'm with you. All right. Thank you. And thanks to Nate for the question. Any other questions or any other suggestions for future topics with Michele? We'll see if anybody writes anything. Anything else you want to add since we have a few more minutes together? Otherwise, we could always wrap up a few minutes early if we're winding down.
That's great. Thank you for having me again. I welcome any questions or feedback that you might have, Debbie, or any of the listeners have. You can reach me at Michele, Michele, 1L in Michele, at curiositytank.com. And I'm just so lucky to be here and to share my love of user research with you and teach people around the world how to ask better questions. So
Well,
thanks for letting me evangelize.
thank you, and we're not letting you go so fast. We just got in a comment and a question. So we've got Sylvia on LinkedIn says, for me, it's been hard to share the research. Some PO I worked with didn't want to share until the whole project was complete.
Huh. I would kind of put my research skills to work there and understand why. Was there a bad experience in the past? Was this the PO's first time sharing research? What sort of concerns did they have? Was this the normal process? If so, how did it come to be? And I would try to diagnose where that was coming from. Seek to understand first, and then you'll be in a better position to maybe suggest something a little bit different in the future.
Okay. We've got two last questions, and the second one is going to be the perfect ending note. Moise asks, would this role fall under CX or UX?
Depends on the team organization. Sometimes UX will be embedded within CX. Sometimes CX is still seen as more marketing, and the teams and UX will be seen as design. So it depends on the organizational structure of the company. But it would sit with the research team. Where the research team sits may differ. That may sit under CX, or that may sit under product or design, depending upon what is called.
Got it. And Darren's question should be last, but someone just snuck in another question. So we'll have Darren finish off the show with his question. Kurt wants to know, do you ever apply UX research to your life outside of work?
Yes, every day. And I torture my daughter with it too.
Isn't she like
Yes, I mean,
6?
it's a mindset. She's 8 now.
Okay. That's how long we've known each other.
It's a mindset. Being a researcher is a mindset, and it's about thinking critically about questions, topics, people, processes. It's about wondering why and how, not what. And yes, I mean, I just got a new microwave, and I was trying to figure out how this, and it has like this built-in air fryer function, which was like, whoa. And trying to figure that, yes, absolutely. Looking at how to expand and manage my business, looking at who to partner with, and what I want to sponsor and be a part of, what I want to support. I do a lot of fundraising in this space. Last year I raised $10,000 for nonprofits in the UX space. And who do I want to support? What do I want to amplify? How do I want to use my voice for good? Right. And yes. Ants. I have an ant problem. It's the rainy season in San Francisco. Like, do you get an exterminator, or do you use Raid? Like, what are the pros and cons? Every time I book a trip, right, we're using our research skills to compare flights and hotels and things like that.
So true. And Sahar asks, do you have any advice for someone looking to transition into research ops from adjacent fields like service design or project management?
I think both of those fields have a ton of transferable knowledge. What I would do is take stock of what experience you have that is directly transferable, and start by crafting not a story, but some examples of how you were able to leverage these pillars, whether it's knowledge management, recruiting and scheduling and guidelines and templates, governance, budgets, timelines, things like that, into the research ops pillars, and be prepared to demonstrate how it is similar. Yeah, tons of transferable skills there. Yeah.
Cool. Then we're going to end with Darren's question because it's a perfect ending question, which is, hey, Got any learning resources for Research Ops?
Yes, the Research Ops community that I mentioned, our Curiosity Tank workshop called Orchestrate, which is available on demand. The Nielsen Norman Group has some nice articles and a quick video. Dovetail also has some things. User Interviews wrote an article and conducted an interview with Kate Townsey. Anything on Kate Townsey, I would just Google her, Katewsey, I think is how she spells her last name. And I would caution you from staying away from anything on Medium, though, unless you know it is authored by someone who truly is expert in the field. There's great information there, but there's so much misinformation as well. But certainly the Research Ops community is a terrific place to start.
Yes, totally. Great point about Medium. As I always say, if you're going to read these articles or watch these videos, just go check that person on LinkedIn and make sure that's someone you want to learn research stuff from, because the answer might be no. All right. So I guess we will wind up for today. Michele, can't wait to have you back on some other topic. Send me a list, dream something up, and you in the audience, let me know. You can also join our Slack community. And of course, there's a link at deltacx.com/links. It's completely free, the Delta CX Slack community. There's no cost at all or membership. So come on over and share your problems and rants and triumphs with the rest of us. And again, please make sure you're following or connected to Michele on LinkedIn. Sign up for that Curiosity Tank newsletter. I get it. I look at it. So one of the few newsletters I'm actually on, so you'll enjoy it too. Yeah, you're getting some thanks in the chat room. And Michele, do you have any events coming up that you want people to know about? Any of your open houses or a new cohort starting?
Yes, I have a new cohort starting at the end of March. We have a Q&A with alumni. The new cohort I'm referring to is the Ask Like a Pro series. We have a Q&A with alumni that you can register for on Eventbrite on March 15th. It is live and it will be recorded as well. It's free. So feel free to join us there. I'm also have a couple of events coming up, one with CPHUX.
Oh, Copenhagen.
I believe that is on, yes, with Helena and her team. And that is on February, I think that is February 8th. That is also free. And then I am doing a live session with Product Management Today on February 16th. I'm sorry, the CPHUX is on Monday, February 7th at 9:30 a.m. Pacific. Product Management Today is on February 16th, which is a Wednesday, and that is at 11 a.m. Pacific. And we're always adding more. The best way to stay in the loop on the events that I do is to sign up for that Fuel Your Curiosity newsletter. For those of you that are part of the Ask Like a Pro community or alums, you also know that there's a ton of alumni-only events that I do as well.
Cool. Well, then I'm going to play us out of here since we're just about out of time. But again, thank you so much. I can't wait to see you again here. And of course, be well. Bye, everybody. See you Friday for Reaction Stream. Customer centricity as business intelligence. Visit deltacx.com to learn why we are